Hello, everybody. Welcome in. It's Friday, and you know what that means.
Front Office Friday! Trade deadline edition almost.
No, I was not expecting that. I was not prepared, Keith, for the trade deadline edition almost. It feels like it. It feels like it is a trade deadline edition.
But
Still, oh my, I thought as we were starting this show, I thought, I could not be more excited for a show. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I am more excited now that you added that in. That was absolutely fantastic. Keith, I think we need to start with this. I need to read back to you the last text that you sent me.
Okay.
The last text that you sent me is one sentence. It says, "This stupid, amazing league," period.
Yep.
What do you mean by that?
There's just so much dumb, silly stuff happening. And it's all dumb, silly stuff that makes the league so great. This is the best soap opera you could ever possibly follow. Plus, there's games involved too. So it's amazing.
It's WWE, but the endings aren't scripted. At least, as far as we know.
Yeah, according to most. There's a corner of the internet that believes otherwise, but sure.
Yeah, right, exactly. Let's start with the Jonathan Kuminga thing, because I think part of it, you and I were responding a little bit to that. The story coming out that Jonathan Kuminga, this was from Shams, as I recall. Jonathan Kuminga is frustrated with his playing time, didn't play the final 18 minutes of the Warriors loss, which, by the way, was a crazy loss. Nikola Jokic puts in a three from well beyond the three-point line to win the game at the buzzer, and the Warriors lose. Off the dribble, yes. And Kuminga is now disillusioned with the notion that Steve Kerr is the guy to believe in him and develop him moving forward and allow him to become the player that he wants to be, which suggests that Jonathan Kuminga would like out of Golden State. Where does all of this go? Like, he was already potentially a trade chip for the Warriors if they're trying to get win now help, although I think he's been good enough this season to where maybe you just keep him because you can win right now with him. But does this now push Kuminga firmly onto the trade market?
Yeah, I'm thinking this is close. Now, maybe this sparks one of those classic, hey, we talked it out, and he plays 30 minutes the next game, and everything's good, and we're all happy now. We just needed to clear the air and all that. That could be. But I think this is more likely to be one of those situations where this is Kuminga saying, I'm done. Like, I haven't been able to lock down a consistent starting spot for a lot of reasons. A lot of that is on him. But then it seems to be, now I'm starting, but I can't finish games. I want to say somebody said he didn't play the last 18 minutes or something like that of the game last night. So that is a huge challenge for him as well. So that becomes, how do you rectify that? Once a player loses full faith in a coach, it works the same way as when a coach loses full faith in a player. It's probably not going to work, and it's not going to happen in that location. So I think there is a very good chance that Kuminga basically is open for trade now, whether that's teams reaching out or the Warriors putting him into trade offers or whatever it is. They've got some other salaries that they could move around, but I think that's where we're at this point.
Keith, Jonathan Kuminga in last night's game played 19 minutes total. Now, he played 34 the game before that. He played 34 minutes the game before that. He averaged 24.4 minutes in the month of December. But I think if you're Jonathan Kuminga and you're seeing the numbers that he's putting up, right? He's at, just to give you December, in 24 minutes, he's averaging 16 and 5, right? In 24 minutes. In his mind, he's got to be thinking, man, if I'm playing 35 minutes a night, I'm pretty damn close to being a 20-point per game scorer, and that completely changes my standing in the league, changes the way that teams look at me, and the only thing holding me back is just not quite getting enough minutes here. And then to go and lose a frustrating game and only play 19 minutes, my guess, and it's only that, is that notion probably boiled over and led to this coming out from Shams.
Yeah, I think that's definitely it. Now, if we go into tradable, well, what's the deal? He
Yeah,
is he is $6 million, so eminently tradable. Anybody in the
sure.
league can put together a $6 million trade package. So that's a thing where that's pretty easily done. So he's got 7.6 million left next year. I bet for Kuminga, there's a thought too. Hey, I'm extension eligible this summer. If I'm not gonna play, I need to be in a place where I can really like prove to them, hey, you should invest big money in me on an extension if it's not going to be the Warriors. And for a lot of reasons, it may not be the Warriors. We don't know what's going to happen with Klay Thompson at the end of the season, but we've got Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, all under big money contracts still to go. We don't know what will happen with Chris Paul in his deal either. But the Warriors are going to be well over the tax again. So they may be looking at it and saying, yeah, we don't know how far we can go with Jonathan Kuminga, especially again if they're not fully sold on what he's going to be as a player. So I would say we're, just under 5 weeks to the trade deadline. I would absolutely be keeping my eye on Jonathan Kuminga as part of a trade from the Warriors. I don't
Yeah.
know that it'll be just him, but as part of something. And we'll see, where that comes.
Keith, there's a report that's just hitting social media too that Moses Moody is also frustrated, almost as though did Jonathan Kuminga find out that Moses Moody was going to put out that he was frustrated, and then he just decided to beat him to the punch? Like when you hear one of your coworkers is going to go ask for a raise, you better slide in there real quick and ask first. Is that
Right.
what happened here?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, and I'm not, we talked about this extensively yesterday, but is this like the 6 sources that are frustrated with Darvin Ham,
Right.
right? Like, one person's like, I'm saying something. Somebody's else like, yeah, me too. Like, I'm going to get it off my chest as well. And then the next thing you know, half the guys are, speaking up. I think the Moses Moody, similar to Kuminga, a little less proven, I think, of a player, but also these two guys, I think, have watched Trace Jackson Davis and Brandon Pajemski, who play their positions respectively, come in and play over them. And now it's very clear this is not necessarily a young player thing for Steve Kerr. It's a these two players thing for Steve Kerr. So Moody, if we want to get into that one, he is at this year 3.9 million. Even easier to trade for him, 5.8 million next year. And again, another guy who's extension eligible next summer. It may be thinking, get me somewhere, and maybe I could get one of those type of extensions like Aaron Neesmith signed, or Cole Anthony's is probably a little rich, but one of those lower end extensions, but I can still lock in 11, $12 million a year and feel pretty good about it. If a team acquires me, I show out over the next couple of months and they feel really good about where we're going. So something's going to come to fruition here with the Warriors, and it's probably going to involve at least these two young guys.
Somebody in our chat said, shouldn't Detroit be all over this? But the rumor that came out today, and we'll get into the Jake Fisher piece, was that the Pistons are still putting it out there that they want to be a buyer here. Now, I guess this would be kind of their MO if they want to be a buyer in terms of adding players to actually put around Cade Cunningham and not just go for draft picks. These guys are young enough to potentially fit, so they could potentially work out there. But what do you think about Detroit as a landing spot for them? And really, what should the Warriors be trying to get in return? Is it solely win now pieces?
I think it has to be. Ideally, they would not be win now like 35-year-old players or anything like that. It would be more of win now guys with a with we're bringing these guys in and we really feel like we can have these guys and have them for the next 3-4 years, kind of the Curry window, right? They can lift us, they can help move us forward. That's probably what you're looking for, because I don't think you're in a position where you can say, we're just going to move them out for younger guys or draft picks or anything like that. Cause I don't think that flies with Curry and Green and Thompson and even Wiggins and Chris Paul and those guys. Like, I think those guys are going to say, whoa, what are we doing? Like, we're giving up on this season. Go get us some guys who can actually play and help. And then we kind of keep moving forward. So yeah, those bad teams, Detroit, Charlotte, Portland, to some extent, San Antonio, their rosters leans a lot younger than some of those other ones. But if they've got veteran guys, yeah, if Kuminga and Moody could be a part of something towards a trade package, then maybe you get things moving in that direction where those guys go. And now we bring in helpful veterans that can kind of lift us. They lost last night, but they are, let's see, they're 16 and 18. So they're a half game behind the Lakers and, kind of that bottom of the play-in tournament, but they're only 4.5 games out of the top 6. So it's not like the Warriors are season is over. You're going to be lucky to make the play-in. It's going to have to be a great run, but they're in a fight now versus feeling like, all right, we feel pretty good about where we're at. They've just lost too many games like last night's game where they probably should have won and it all slipped away from them. They fell apart late. I also saw something about they didn't generate a shot within 10 feet in the fourth quarter or something like that.
The entire
of the
fourth
game,
quarter?
which it's something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It went by social media so fast. Scrolled through TweetDeck, so I couldn't find it again. But if that's true, yeah, boy, that's tough to have happen and then justify not playing Kuminga.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when he's a guy that can get you to the rim. Only shooting 28% from three on the season, though. So there's perhaps some justification there for why Steve Kerr
37% last year, though. So that starts to become which one's more real, right?
Right.
It's probably really like his rookie year where he shot 34%.
34.
Yeah, it's probably right there in the middle, and that's what's real.
Fine.
But yeah, I mean that's
good,
fine for a guy who's a 4. Yeah,
you're not getting played off the floor if you're shooting 34. Now, if you're shooting 30% or 28%, take a seat. You can't do that. All right.
One other thing, sorry, with Kuminga before we move on, I'd keep an eye for some of the more expensive teams in the league: Boston, Phoenix, Milwaukee. Very acquirable number for them. That's a key part for those teams. They don't necessarily have a way to go get somebody who makes $20 million on the trade market. Right. Heck, we've talked about it with Boston. It's hard for them to get somebody who makes $12 million. $6 million, that's an acquirable number. You get them next year. Maybe you're the team that works out a long-term extension with them, and now you kind of build it up. Chris D says he missed the yell. Can we do it again? Absolutely not. You know the rules. Got to be here on time. Watch the replay.
That's right. That's right. Your Highness Charles chimes in.
Checking in.
Yeah, checking in. Yeah. It says, fellas, my Nets feel kind of directionless right now. Do they say fellas in England? Maybe they do.
Chaps,
I get chaps. I get that we don't own our own picks.
Start over. You have to read this whole thing in a British accent.
Oh no. I can every once in a while do it, but like if I'm focusing on doing a British accent, it just does not come out right. I wind up just being offensive.
Well, I mean, that was the idea.
Yeah, right. Let me see. I have to channel like some Johnny Depp here. Fellas, my Nets feel kind of directionless right now. I get that turned a little more Australian. Oh, this is just bad. I'm gonna move on. I get that we don't own our own picks, but doesn't it make sense to cash in on Bridges/Claxton now?
That was the best moment in the history of the show. This show is off the rails and it's like 15 minutes in.
Come on, mate.
Throw another shrimp on the bobby.
No.
We went full Australian there. Not Bridges. No, I just think Bridges is so good and on such a good contract. But I think you have to kind of own, is Bridges a number 1? Is he number 2? Is he a number 3? Is he a high-end number 2? Well, that's what the Nets have to decide now is what is he? Like, what do we really want Mikal Bridges to be? Where do we see him as? And then that can start to guide your roster decisions moving forward. If you believe he's a number 1 and we're gonna run with him, then I think you can start to move other guys. But if it's like he's probably more of a number 2, then it might be all right. Well, then maybe Claxton, Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas. Maybe that starts to become the trade package to go get a number 1, along with, they don't own their own draft picks, but they have some other ones now. So that's something that they could do. But bottoming it out this year just doesn't make sense for them because the only pick that they had this year was their own, but it goes to Houston. So they don't have any of those extra picks yet. Those start coming in after this season. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky for the Nets.
Yeah. I still, we talked about this the other day on the show. I still think he built around Bridges, but I'm high on him. I think that he can ultimately be a number one guy. Although I think he is a little bit older than most people realize. Isn't he like
He's
27
not
or 28?
23. Yeah.
Right. Which when I think of him, I think he's like 25 or something, and he's not really, as I recall.
He will be 28 this summer.
Yeah.
So,
That's what it was.
Definitely not young anymore.
So in terms of his window to truly like make that leap, he kind of needs to do it like next year. By next year, and not say he's not good right now. He is. He's a really good player, but to make that true, if he's going to be that 1A guy, he probably needs to get there by next year.
Let me make sure I have that date. Yeah, he is. He's 27 right now. August 30th, he'll turn 28. So
clock is ticking.
It's a little older than I thought too.
Ritual King, Keldon Johnson to the Lakers. Can he help with scoring? Sure, he could, but how are you getting him? That's the question, right?
Yeah.
How do you actually get him? And I got to pull up the Spurs sheet.
Yeah, he makes about, 16, 17 million this season. It's somewhere in that range.
20 this season.
20,
he goes 20. Oh, he's on the
down.
declining contract.
Yeah, that's right.
4 years, 74 million left.
So 20 million. So you're talking D'Lo or Hachimura. Need to be your reasonable trade matching
plus
to get him. And then that takes them out of a bigger trade later using those guys or a different bigger trade. And that's where I think I don't know that Johnson is that big of an upgrade for the Lakers that I would do something like that.
Yeah, especially if it's more and I like Keldon Johnson a lot, but it's more the opportunity cost that you'd be concerned with there. Ryan Barnes said, love the content. I was hoping you could explain how a trade exception can be used in a trade with an example. And can you also stack trade exceptions? Well, Kate, as I recall, your Celtics used a trade exception in a deal not too long ago. They generated one in the Gordon Hayward deal. Was that the one that I'm thinking of? It was Gordon Hayward. Was it the Evan Fournier for some reason? Something like that is striking a bell. Is ringing a bell as well.
Yep, they created what at the time was the largest trade exception in NBA history because Hayward was a sign and trade to the Charlotte Hornets. So they created a massive trade exception. They used that to bring in Evan Fournier, then created another trade exception when they signed and traded Evan Fournier to the Knicks. They used the remainder of the Hayward trade exception actually to bring in Josh Richardson in that deal. So that was another usage there. But an example right now, let's just use a real world one. They have a $6.2 million trade exception from the Grant Williams sign and trade to Dallas. So that also involves base year compensation. So that means he only counts as half. But let's say 6.2 million. That is what their trade exception is. We just went over Jonathan Kuminga makes 6.1 million. So in this case, Boston could trade for Jonathan Kuminga. It's hard for them to match salary for a lot of guys in trades, but that's a way you can bring him. To the last part of Ryan's question, you can't stack trade exceptions and you can't combine them with any other exceptions either, or you can't combine them with outgoing salary. What that means is if you have a $10 million trade exception in a $10 million player salary, you can't go get $20 million. You're not allowed to do that. You can break trade exceptions up. Like we said, the Hayward one was used to acquire Fournier and Josh Richardson, but you can't combine trade exceptions with anything else to bring in more salary another way.
Now, what you could do, though, is a trade exception plus whatever. I mean, you could do a $10 million trade exception and 3 first-round picks to acquire player X.
Yep.
If you
and you can do a $10 million trade exception plus a $10 million player that can go out. You just can't bring in a $20 million player. You could only bring in whatever that player or the trade exception match on their own. So you're allowed to send them out in trades. Yeah.
Let's say the league, let's just pretend you've got a trade exception for 10 million and a player for 10 million, and you're going to trade that for 2 players that each make $10 million. The league would process that as 2 separate trades, even though that may get reported as 1, 4, or 3 player trade with the trade exception involved.
Yeah. What happens at this time of year, and especially at the trade deadline, reporting comes in as they're trading player X and Y for player Z. And what really happens is it's really player wise going into a trade exception. Player X is a salary match. Maybe there's a new trade exception created, something like that. Teams are allowed to, when they actually make a trade, they can functionally process the trade in the way that is most beneficial to them. So if that means a minimum player goes in via the minimum exception, which means you don't have to match, that's fine. Or if you send the player in via the minimum exception, but you need that $2 million in the trade, you can do that as well. Teams are allowed to do that, and that can mean trades look different on both sides in a trade. But in the end, as long as it's all cap legal one way or another, whether it's one big trade or chunked up into several smaller trades functionally, it doesn't matter. And for practical purposes, we never jump on like the reporters who are like, well, they didn't report it this way, because it doesn't really matter. It's player X and Y for player Z. That's all anybody needs to know. So that's kind of a spot where it just makes a lot of sense to report it that way. Somebody asked, how are trade exceptions generated? How a trade exception is created, it's when you send out more salary for one player than you take back for that one player. So if you can, and let's keep using our 10 million example, if you can send out 20 million in salary but bring back 10 million somehow, you can then go into a place where you create a $10 million trade exception. It's the difference in those players' salary, and you only get it if you're already over the salary cap.
But you don't generate that trade exception if you have players stacked up. Say you trade for 3 players that are worth a combined 30 million and you send out 35 million, that wouldn't generate a $5 million trade exception?
It would. It's only on the sending side. The sending side can only generate a trade exception for one player as the salary matching piece. So you could take in 3 guys for 30 million, send out the 35 in your example, and yes, you would create a $5 million. It's just that one player. You can't do 2 players for 40 million, bring in 30 million. You don't create a $10 million. That's not how it works. It's only for the one player going out on the sending side.
And processing deals in terms of whether a deal gets reported as all one big thing when really it gets chunked up, at 99% of the time, it doesn't matter like how the trade actually goes through. We still are going to look at it in terms of the big overall deal. It almost mattered though with that Gary Payton deal that looked like it was going to fall apart, where they didn't chunk it up. They tried to put it through as one big deal, and then one piece in a 4-team trade suddenly became questionable, and it put the entire trade in jeopardy. But again, that was a very rare situation. The vast majority of the time, it doesn't matter how the league actually puts through the trade versus how it gets reported. It all ends up the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we will. You guys will hear this as hopefully more trades come out over the coming weeks or trade deadline day or whenever they are. We will often say there's going to be something more to this trade, whether that's the salary matching isn't quite there or a player needs to be waived to fit the new players coming in. We will reference that a lot. And you just basically, as the reporting comes out, once you get the tweet from Woj or Shams, 99.99999% of the time, the major components are done. It's going to be the other little stuff that will trickle out later that will come out. And you may even get hours later, hey, this team, and sometimes it's when somebody like me has actually had a chance to sit down, put it into my cap sheets, work it through. Oh, hey, this team, should have created a $10 million trade exception or whatever it may be in there. It's just, all of that stuff takes a little bit of time to process through.
All right. Ben asks thoughts on D'Angelo Russell, Taurean Prince, Gabe Vincent, and a second for Kyle Kuzma and Tyus Jones. Well, the report from Jake Fisher that came out today said the Wizards would indeed consider moving on from Kyle Kuzma, but they want multiple firsts for him. Do you see he just got a new deal over the summer? Do you think he's a value on that contract? And do you see the Wizards getting that asking price?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they might get that asking price. This is not enough for that kind of trade.
If they're looking for first, that's not.
Yeah. And even if they're not insisting on we need multiple firsts, this just isn't. None of those guys do anything for Washington. So the only value piece for the Wizards, unfortunately, would be the second round pick. And that's not clearly enough. The rest of the guys, that's just matching salary.
Right. And that's not to say these aren't players who have value,
Sure.
but they don't have value to a team that's in a
To
rebuild.
Washington. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because D'Lo in this case probably picks up his player option, and now they're just sitting kind of there. And Washington's also not in a spot where it's like we have to get off Kuzma's contract. They just gave it to him, so I don't
Mhm.
think that would be a thing. But yeah, the value that maybe right. I don't know. I mean, this is the time of year where everybody's like, "Hey, I need a million first round picks," and then it's like, yeah, well, good luck. You're not going to get them. So I don't know. That's a
We'll
little
give you
risky.
a second rounder deal, right? I mean,
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's not how that's gonna go down. So I think that's
right.
the challenge. I don't think Washington gets multiple firsts back unless it's like one real first and then a top 20 protected first or
And maybe you're
some kind
taking
of
back
thing
a
like that.
salary that's
Yeah.
undesirable or something like
Yeah,
that.
and you're paying for that. Yeah, that
Mhm.
could be a way that works out. We'll see. But yeah, Ben, your value is just a little off because of the Wizards. Here's just a general recommendation because Trevor gets this too, primarily with
Mhm.
Lakers. I get it for the entire league, covering the whole league in general. People send us fake trades constantly. The
Yep.
biggest I rarely will evaluate any of them because that's just like now I've turned that's like moths to the flame because then I'll get 900 other fake trades dropped in my mentions. But what you end up, my biggest thing that I recommend everybody doing it is, so I'm going to assume if Ben's a Lakers fan, think about, would Washington do this when you think through your fake trade? It just because it works in the trade machine, that doesn't necessarily work. So I think you send it out, you take a look at it, or you come up with your idea, then look at it from both sides. I always work off of the Real GM trade and transaction forum, which is a fun place if you love this stuff and you want to come up with fake trades and get people's thoughts on them. The number one rule is you have to put in your trade justification, why both sides should or would do it. And that's
Mhm.
been hugely helpful to me when I think through these things of, yeah, this side probably wouldn't do it. So I think that becomes a little bit of a different thing there.
Yeah, usually if you're looking at a trade and you could see reasons why fans of both sides would be kind of like, I don't know if I would do that. That's when you know you probably have a pretty fair deal. If you can see both sides being uncertain or even
Yep.
angry about the trade, then you've
Yep.
probably got a good deal. Senpai
Exactly.
said 3-team trade. Murray, so DeJounte Murray, Capella, D'Lo, Wendell Carter Jr., and more. So basically saying that a 3-team trade between the Hawks, the Magic, and the Lakers.
I mean, you're not telling us who's landing where
Who's
or
going
anything. So
where?
there's no, I mean, I don't know. Like the Magic don't need Clint Capella. I think the Magic would love to grab DeJounte Murray for themselves before they'd help the
Yeah,
Lakers get him. So I don't know. That's too there's you got to tell us more.
yeah.
Like,
And
yeah,
Senpai's my guy. He thinks through this stuff
sure.
on a different level. So I know he's got more to
Yep.
this. I'm sure he's got something. So I'll keep
Yeah,
an eye out and
throw
see what he
more back
responds
in
with.
there. You don't have to do another super chat if you just want to throw it in the chat. We'll find him.
Yeah.
We'll come back to it. But yeah, give us a little more detail.
TK said, do the Lakers only have one first round pick to put into a trade right now? Correct. Yeah, they only have one tradable first round pick right now. Now that would change this summer, and some of it depends on what the Pelicans do with the 2024
Mhm.
first or 2025 first and how well that looks. But yeah, for right now, for this year, the trade deadline, they can put one first into a deal.
And I believe that the Lakers, so there could be things that could happen. The Lakers could incentivize the Pelicans to make that decision, but it would have to be through another transaction. They would have
Hmm.
to say, "Hey, make the decision right now, and we'll give you a second round pick or something like that, and we'll take back player X." So that could be a thing. But I believe, if I remember correct, and I'll try to look this up and confirm it, it gets 1 week ahead of
Ahead of the draft.
the draft, or it might be ahead of the lottery
Hmm.
if the team's in the lottery. I can't remember that part of it, but I know it's at the very latest. It's 1 week ahead of the draft
Yeah,
that
so
they
they've
have to
they've got a
decide
little
on
while
that.
to
Yeah,
they'll know
it's
where the
definitely
Lakers
not the
sit in the
trade
standings
deadline. Yeah,
before they make the decision. So
yeah.
so that's
And
something that
it,
that we'll keep an eye on.
the going assumption on that, I actually asked some folks about that when they were in town here in Orlando for the showcase, was if the Lakers somehow are a lottery team, you take it this year. Anything
Yeah.
else, you let it roll over a year. Because if it's 17 to 25, doesn't really matter, or 30, like that part, whatever.
Yeah.
You're getting a late second. But if they're in the lottery, yeah, you definitely take the chance then of, hey, we'll snag this right now. And obviously, clearly, we won't know that till either they clinch a top 6 spot or until after the play-in tournament. So that's not going to be decided anytime soon, which does hamstring the Lakers, that and that protected pick they owe to Utah. Those
Now,
two things kind of got them a little tied up.
Thinking this through, what would the Lakers, like, if let's say the Lakers got the Pelicans to make the decision right now, what would be the preference? Because if they say, okay, we'll take 2025, well, then 2024 isn't tradable at the trade deadline. If they take 2024, is 2025 then tradable? I guess. Well, no, because then it would be touching the 2024 pick. 2026 isn't tradable because it's touching the 2027
really
pick.
one. Not right now. There isn't one. Yeah.
Right.
You would want them to do it you would want to know. No, if they take 2025, you could then maybe work a draft day trade using the 24.
You could do that. I'm just saying it doesn't help them at the trade deadline this year. Sure. Like to give up something in a trade right now for them to make the decision now doesn't help you.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. It's just, that's more of a pie in the sky. Could be a thing that happens, but probably not.
All right. Ellie said, was it a mistake to trade SGA for Paul George?
I mean, in retrospect, yeah, probably.
Sure.
But you weren't getting trade, Kawhi. You don't get Kawhi Leonard. So
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, if we want to do full revisionist history, you haven't gotten the return out of those two guys you hoped for. You've had a bunch of injury-filled years, and they haven't been very good. They've been good, but not very good. So that becomes a challenge. But you don't make Paul George trade, you don't get Kawhi Leonard. That story, unfortunately, is still yet to be written because the Clippers haven't finished this run with those guys yet.
Mm-hmm. All right. DB Farr said, Keith, you should create a class for aspiring front office workers. I'm in school for business and planning for law school, would definitely invest. That kind of exists.
Yeah, it does exist. Sports Business Classroom, which Bobby Marks of ESPN is now the head instructor of. Eric Pincus is also involved with Sports Business Classroom. That exists. It's in Las Vegas. They also have online offerings that you can get into too. So I would check that out. You just Google Sports Business Classroom, and it'll tell you all about it. If you're in school for business and law school, planning for law school rather, I just did a couple months ago. I was out in Phoenix with the Arizona State, did a mock trade deadline competition where we went out there and law students from all over the country. Some came in as teams, all from the same law school. Some came in from other law schools, and some not even law schools, just other programs where it made sense, came in and they went through a mock trade deadline, and we had a lot of fun with that and talked through all of it. So I would look into those options if that's what you want to do. The really cool thing is, I wish all of this stuff existed when I was in college, because it didn't. There was nothing like any of this stuff. Basically, if you wanted a job in the front office, you needed to know somebody. Like that was how you were going to get into a position like that, or you had to really work and grind and internships, making coffee and getting the dry cleaning and that stuff to get in there. Now there's all these really cool ways that you can get a foot in the door. The really cool thing about Sports Business Classroom, when they do the event in Las Vegas, the in-person week-long event over Summer League, they bring in all kinds of people in with people who come in and from the league, from front offices, people who are agents, people who are part of the broadcast production. You're going to get tons of connection and come out of that. So I would really think, getting into stuff like that is, I would look at that if that's a path you can afford. It is an investment, but again, think about it. It's your career, right? So you want to really, put a lot of time and money into it, and hopefully it'll all pay you back in the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you say that wasn't around when we were in school and all that kind of stuff. And you're absolutely right. But that made me think, Keith. I remember one of my first college classes, like orientation classes or something like that, them telling us about this new thing called Google. We're
Yeah,
we're kind of old, telling us about the benefits of using the new Google search engine.
right.
So this was also a long time ago.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh,
Yeah. We had yeah, things work a little bit differently for sure.
Senpai said Mosley's gone away from Wendell Carter and leaned on Goga and Mo. Thought process is they get D'Lo and Rui to help their shooting. So D'Lo, Rui go to the Magic. Hawks get Carter Jr. as a new 5, replacing Capella, and they get like Gary Harris, and then he's got like picks. The Lakers sending out whatever picks they can to get
Yeah, it
Capella
feels
and Murray. Still think it's
that
light.
hey, that's not a deal Orlando would do. Um, Rui wouldn't necessarily really have a big place on that team. They already have a bunch of other forwards. So he doesn't really make sense for them, especially the longer term aspect of his contract. D'Angelo Russell could help right now in a vacuum, but I think if they wanted to do something like that, they just cut the Lakers out and try to take Murray for themselves.
Yeah.
They'd plus it up with draft picks or whatever they had to do to rebalance that to get him themselves.
Mike has a question, said, hey, Keith, if a team trades for a player who can't be extended because of salary structure, i.e. Markkanen, do they still get bird rights at free agent time?
In most cases, yes.
Yeah.
They still the player retains their bird rights. The one difference is if a player's on a 1-year contract that they signed and would have bird or early bird rights after they lose those, which is why they get the de facto no trade clause.
Mm-hmm.
They can turn that down because they would lose their bird rights. So anybody who signed the qualifying offer or anybody who signed a 1-year contract or a 1-year contract with a player option after it, those players would lose their bird rights if they're traded. The Lakers ran into this, what, Trevor, like 3-4 years running,
Yep.
something
Mm-hmm.
like that, with a handful of different guys. I remember
JaVale McGee, KCP, yeah, a number of them.
he was like the original poster boy of everybody wanted to throw him in every trade, and it was like, well, if you'd approve it,
Yeah.
the Lakers also very famously, we're going way back here. They had one of the most famous cases of a player blowing up a trade
Is
because
that
of
Devin
this.
George?
Yep. Yeah. Yep. He blew that up because he, was like, nah, I don't want to go. And it was the same thing. He had his stuff here. So that's a thing there. But yeah, to Big Mike's question, yeah, they generally still would keep the bird rights in a case of Markkanen specifically. Yes, the team would acquire him. Also with Markkanen, it's not a free agent next summer. He is a partially guaranteed contract next year. So it was a weird structure because remember that was the one he signed as part of that weird sign and trade where he went from Chicago to Cleveland very, very late in the free agency process. And then he got traded from Cleveland to Utah in the Mitchell trade. But he wasn't the guy he has become when he signed that contract. That's why that final year is partially guaranteed.
That's something that occurred to me. It's super late last night. I was thinking about this, and I was very sleep deprived at the moment, but I was just processing trade stuff and thinking about, how teams really find advantages in the market. And I get from fans, I see a lot of kind of the anti-stock market type of strategy. I hear a lot of sell low and buy high, right? Everybody wants a guy that's underperforming off their team and a guy that's playing great on their team and how difficult that can be. And I trying to look at it from the perspective of a GM or a team. Sometimes if you're really going to make a leap, it's taking the gamble on a guy that can become underpaid on their contract. Markkanen being an example, a guy who really takes that leap. Then you have the extra flexibility and the benefit of having a guy in a cheap contract. I think too about the Warriors and how important having Steph Curry on their contract. They gambled on his ankles not becoming a serious problem, and that's what ultimately created the flexibility for them to get Kevin Durant and for them to stack up all these pieces that they did. As much as we look at this guy is great. Like I've got a question coming in right now about shouldn't the Lakers go after Donovan Mitchell or like, yeah, these guys are great players. But for some teams, the best path forward to success may be taking a risk on a guy that has the potential to greatly outperform their contract if a few things break their way. That's what is going to ultimately pull you forward. There's some front offices that won't want to do that because there is that inherent risk, and teams can be very risk averse. But I think sometimes we don't put enough stock into the idea that buying low on a talent and believing in that talent to become something greater, projecting forward what that player can be, is just as, if not more important than going out and getting the top tier stars right now.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, that's a lot of this comes down to, and I don't necessarily like thinking about it this way because even as Mr. Salary Cap guy here, they're human beings, they're players.
It's dehumanizing, right? Yeah.
But a lot of this comes down to asset arbitrage, right? It's what is the production versus the value. If the production is really good versus what we're paying, then I'll pay more to go get that in a trade. And that's a lot of what this comes down to. It's sometimes it's, hey, that lot has a really terrible house on it, but it's a really great lot. So so you're buying the lot. You don't really care about the house that's on it because you're going to plow through that anyway and restart. And that's kind of where it is. And then there's also the extra component of the NBA, as much as the CBA tries to make a very level playing field in the new rules with the, hurting the tax teams and limiting what they can do even more than they ever have before, is trying to make it an even playing field. Some teams just have a tolerance to spend more money than other teams do. The Golden State Warriors can spend more money than the Oklahoma City Thunder can. They just can. The market size dictates it. Steve Ballmer owns the Clippers. He can outspend everybody else in the league if he wants to. We talked about it like a week ago. He's made like $1 billion for doing nothing this year just because he has Microsoft stock. Like, and the dividends paid out $1 billion. Like, that's $1 billion. Like, even the Warriors right now, as expensive as they are, they're like $500 million in payroll. So Steve Ballmer could literally say, if there was a way, go get me $100 million, $200 million more of salary and taxes if it's going to help us win. And he has a tolerance level that maybe the Orlando Magic ownership doesn't have, because they're going to look at it and say, we can't take on Zach LaVine. It's going to put us in a place where it doesn't make sense, where the Clippers might be like, hell yeah, go get Zach LaVine. Who cares? We're just stacking it all up. And that's where these trades are not as simple as, whoa, that seems really unbalanced. Why did that guy go there for such a little return? It has to be thought of in a vacuum of what was good for that team, what was good for the other team, and what did they maybe miss out on that they could have done instead?
Yes.
And those are the things that, for both sides in a trade, that you look at and say, all right, I kind of get it. But like even the Knicks Raptors trade, I liked it for both sides, but there's still a little part of me that says, could you maybe have gotten more for Barrett and Quickly? And what if you did add one or two of your real first rounders to that? Was there something more you could have gotten, even if I really do like OG Anunoby? Like that's just something you have to really factor in when you start breaking down all this stuff. Is it's not as simple as it works in the trade machine followed by, well, this guy's good and this guy's also kind of good, so let's go forward. Sometimes it is, but it's not always that way.
Ismail said that's exactly what the Lakers did this offseason, bet on players like Reddish, Hayes, Wood, and that bum who's getting surgery. So I don't like stuff like that, because Gabe Vincent's not choosing to get hurt.
Yeah,
it's not like he decided to get hurt or something like that. But I'll say that's not really what I'm talking about. Those are 1-year contracts. Those, if anything, are contracts that are lose-lose, because either the guy isn't an NBA player essentially, and then you're paying them on a minimum deal and you're just taking up a roster spot, or they're pretty good and you're going to lose them at the end of the year because they're only on a 1-year contract. I'm talking about the guys where you say, hey, here's a 4-year deal and we're going to bet that you're going to become better than this. And those are
you're talking about Lauri Markkanen, right? Like a guy that, where it was that contract looked pretty sketchy when he was with Cleveland. It wasn't a bad one, but it was like, that's a lot for what Lauri Markkanen is. And obviously the Jazz felt, we think he could be more, right? We think he can be more. Or maybe the Jazz didn't feel that way at all. And the Jazz were like, we want 4 first-round picks. Lauri Markkanen's the salary match, and we'll figure his stuff out later, and marketing grew into that. 'Cause
And
that
it happened
happens
to work out
sometimes too.
for
And
sure.
don't be fooled when teams are like, oh yeah, we saw in him because
We
we
knew all
saw he
along.
had a 20-point game once. We were the ones watching him. We believed, this. That does happen. Don't get me wrong. It happens a lot, but sometimes you just luck into stuff. Luck is a
Mm-hmm.
huge part of all of this. It really is, because sometimes everything looks perfect and then somebody gets hurt. And then it's like, well, what happened here? Like, now it all kind of crumbles and falls apart. Sometimes it all looks perfect on paper, and then it's like, there. I go back, that Celtics team, like Gordon Hayward talked about earlier this week, that 2018-19 Celtics team on paper was as loaded an NBA team as I've maybe ever seen in this kind of current 30 team era. And they weren't good because of what he said. They didn't fit. And everybody
Mm-hmm.
wanted the ball, and everybody had their own agenda. You had 7 guys with 7 different things they were trying to prove. And not to be Mr. Cliche here, that's why you play the games, right? None of this stuff,
Yep.
it all looks good. We think it all works a certain way, but none of this stuff, necessarily works that way. Brian Walters, let's say this, says smash that like button. Brian's right.
Yes,
Like,
please.
get the likes up for us. Help us out. We get 1,000 people watching the show. Let's get the likes up on this, because I think would really, really enjoy that. It helps, guys. It just helps more people find the show. The more likes,
The more
it
people that
gets.
find out about the show, the better. If you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button as
Please.
well. We'll do a few more before we wrap up the show for the day. Thank you for answering my questions. Another question: what value do the Warriors trade for Bojan Bogdanovic from Detroit? Moody and Kuminga, I heard you bring up earlier. Is Bojan a target you think the Warriors should look at for guys for younger players of the caliber of Kuminga? And maybe I have Kuminga ahead of Moody. I'd imagine most do, but those types of guys.
Yeah, I'd probably consider him as a really good target for them if they really felt like we're a guy away from doing what the Lakers did last year, making noise, making a run through the play-in, and then being a dangerous playoff team. Sure, I think Bogdanovich could help them quite a bit in that respect. I think too, for them, it's you're going to see them start to turn some salary into other salary, because they're very limited in what they can do. This is their last year to take on salary in any trades. Starting next year, they won't be able to do that. So I'd keep an eye on Chris Paul. That's $30 million of, even if it was to a team where it's like, why do they want Chris Paul? Well, his contract's not guaranteed for next year. They could just get out of it completely, and the Warriors could pay it off in draft picks, or maybe they throw in a
Imagine if Chris Paul gets bought out?
Yeah, that could happen again. Now, remember though, Chris Paul gets bought out, teams that are over the apron can't sign him. So teams that are like, man, we really need a point guard, they can't sign him, because you can only if you're
like
up and
the
over
Suns?
the tax apron. Yeah, the Suns or the Lakers, or I don't know. The Clippers aren't really there anymore. They've got Harden, but any of those teams.
Well, the Lakers aren't over that second apron.
They're over the first apron though. It's any apron team.
It's any apron team. Are prohibited.
Team, yeah.
Well, then why because we've been talking all about how the Lakers, they saved money off the MLE and the Gabe Vincent deal, which they would be able to use in the buyout market. I've had those discussions with Lakers
but that's
personnel.
Very minimal money, right? That's only like $2 million.
So sure.
They just can't go get somebody who makes that much money. And the Lakers, they should be. Let me rephrase: they're not over the apron. They're 4.9 under the first apron. So they could then, because they're
under
still
the
be
first
clear.
Still too. Oh, that's
they're
right.
still under the first. They're over
between the two aprons, but they're not.
Yeah,
it's the tax.
Right. They're between the tax and the apron and the second apron. It's all a little.
There's too many damn aprons at this point, Keith.
Right? It's like a kitchen around.
It is.
Just get messy.
Ellie said, "Who are your second favorite teams?"
I don't really have one.
I mean,
I have teams I get attached to.
It changes year by year.
That's it. Yep.
Like teams I enjoy. Like I really enjoy watching OKC play, but that wasn't the case like 4 years ago. It's not like I've got one team that I just and I'm just picking a year 4 years ago. It's not like it's the same teams every single year, or there's like a second team that I go, oh, I really have to watch this team play. No, it's who's exciting, who's doing some things that maybe weren't expected, and things like that.
There's a couple things that happened with me when the Celtics had all the Nets picks, and then it all fell apart on the Nets.
So you watched the Nets?
I got super attached to that Nets team because I was watching them to see if they would lose, which is weird, but I liked Spencer Dinwiddie and Joe Harris and all the guys that they kind of found through their, I call it the diamond mining process, with them. I tend to like, I'll pick a West Coast team to kind of lock in on, because that gives me somebody to kind of watch in the late night windows. But yeah, it just kind of naturally evolves. And then I find myself rooting for a team. Like I was rooting for Denver once Boston was out of the playoffs, because they'd never won one. And I kind of wanted to see them win a title. And I thought, that'd be a lot of fun to watch that kind of play out that way. As the Warriors came into like being the Warriors, I was all in on that team, which I think they were like everyone's second favorite team in those first couple years. And then they won enough that then everybody was like, no, I don't like you anymore. Go away.
Mm-hmm.
And you're spending all this money, and Draymond Green's a jerk, and like all this stuff. And then all the cute things that we all liked that Steph did, they became annoying. And it's like, go away. Like, stop doing your dancing and shimmying around. Like, I don't like that anymore. So it's right. You live long enough to see yourself become the bad guy or whatever.
Exactly. To see yourself become the villain. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself
had the
become the
building
villain.
party or whatever it was, which was that I admit was pretty funny. Like that's petty and silly, but yeah.
All right, let's go to Ali. Said, if you're the GM of the Warriors, what decisions would you make? Trade Wiggins, Clay, or Draymond? Steve Kerr last year, the contract as well. I'm considering Kuminga and Moody trades. I'm listening to what's out there, seeing if there's something I can do with Chris Paul's salary. But I want to, if this is it, I want to give, this group has meant too much to Warriors fans. They've been unquestionably a dynasty in the NBA. I want to give them one last shot.
Yeah, I'm not moving Clay or Draymond. I don't even know if you could realistically move Draymond right now. That it'd have to probably be taking a loss on a trade. If somebody wants Wiggins, sure, I'm listening to see, if they want to take a shot and figure it out. There's a sick part of me that's like, trade him to the Raptors. Let's put all the Canadian guys on the Raptors and see, is there like some kind of superpower they get from being home that lifts them all up, and then they end up being this.
You combine them like Infinity Stones, like you put them all together, and suddenly they're that much more powerful by being combined. There's
like a Voltron, or right?
There's a multiplication.
Was it Voltron that
Voltron,
the
Lions, yeah. Defender of the universe.
Well, Wiggins and Barrett, and maybe get SGA there. I don't want to do that to the Thunder, though. So Kelly Olynyk, get him home to Canada as your center, and off you go. But yeah, I'd be open to listening on a lot more things than I think the Warriors historically are thought of being. But they've made big in-season trades before. They made the Wiggins trade. That was a big in-season trade that they made. So I wouldn't rule it out. I think they will get there.
I definitely have the theme song from Voltron stuck in my head now. Da, 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 da. Yeah, all that. Yep. That was a good one. Jimmy said, is there any way the Lakers could just borrow Spoelstra like on loan, like we talked about earlier in the week about the loan system and how that works in soccer? It doesn't have to be every day. It could just be weekends or when he's feeling like a challenge. Love the show, guys. Like he shows up with a sleeping bag.
Yeah. He just pops in. They hand him a coffee because he gets off the plane, and then he's like, all right, let's get to work. Yeah, that's kind of funny. I don't know that the Heat are on board with that.
No. Teddy, is Lowry a realistic target for LA? I don't know. I mean, the question is, what do the Jazz want for him? Probably future assets, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we've heard the whole 5 first-round picks thing. If that's even remotely real, then no, because the Lakers can't do that. So, yeah, I mean, there's a chance, but yeah, I don't know.
I love Lakers fans, but fans want a ring like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Chemistry is everything. Love watching Banchero play. Oh, Keith, can we get an accent?
I don't know that I'm going to give you the English accent. It comes out, the Boston accent comes out.
The Boston accent.
When I get excited, when I'm really excited, then it slips back out. I do it to my daughter sometimes in the car, and it drives her crazy. But come on, what are you doing? How was school today? What are we doing here? And then she gets mad because then she'll be like, you sound more like you're from New York, which it's because I'm exaggerating it. It does sound a little bit there. Let me ask you a question, though. Did you see Lord of the Rings?
I have. No? It's been a long time, but yes, I have.
Does Gollum deserve more credit in that movie? I put this in the group chat, and then our buddy Josh Eberly tweeted it to the world. It was not meant to be seen by the world, but he tweeted it out anyway. Where I said, does Gollum deserve more credit? Because he actually destroyed the ring. Like, he destroyed the ring.
That is true.
and yet he's thought of
That
as a
is true.
bad guy. Like,
Well,
I don't know.
because he started looking all,
Well, I get it. He was a bad guy, but he
and he
still,
became this bad guy, and
yeah,
he starts doing all these Weasley things and
yeah.
all of that. But I guess technically he is the guy who like how much credit do you give Darth Vader for throwing the Emperor down that pit, which then
All of
ultimately
it.
didn't wind up killing him because you had to
Yeah,
retcon
well,
that?
I
What are you
mean,
doing, Star
yeah,
Wars? But
well,
anyway,
yeah, cut that part out afterwards. But yeah,
right.
Anakin was the chosen one, and he fulfilled his destiny. Roundabout way to get there. He, might have killed a few younglings along the way. Spoilers
True.
for 30-year-old movies that people maybe haven't seen, but yeah, I don't know. There was just a thought that I had one day watching Lord of the
Interesting.
Rings. If Gollum deserves more credit. My wife's like, "What is
Secretly,
this
he's
supposed
a villain,
basketball
but
show?"
secretly the hero.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be
I don't know.
a
We'll
good
see.
thought. That'd be a
Hey,
good
Doug,
rabbit
not
hole
Dave.
to go to. Yeah, Doug, not Dave McMenamin said, "Hard for Pistons fans, but you two lift my spirit. Thank you." Well, thank you
I
for joining
appreciate
us.
that. Yeah,
We
we have
appreciate
fun.
that.
Today
Uh,
today started a little random, but sure.
it did. It did. Adrian said, "How do you guys feel about Rondo as the Lakers head coach with Doc Rivers as an assistant?"
I,
I don't.
I
I don't think they'd
Doc's
do
not
that.
going to do that,
No,
and like I don't. Yeah, I
I
don't know.
think you had a first time head coach already. But I had Rondo floated to me the other day as a name, and he was on the podcast recently where he said that he and LeBron, like, they planned the Lakers offense, they coached the Lakers offense essentially, and Frank Vogel just took the defense in the championship year. And I get, like, Rondo's a brilliant basketball mind, that makes sense. I don't know that that means he's ready to step in and be a head coach, but if you figure that you have to make a move, there's not a lot out there in terms of the talent pool right now. I don't think he would be the first option or anything, but I mean, I
Yeah,
guess crazier things have happened.
yeah. And it would not happen this way. Doc's not gonna. Doc coaches again. He's going to be the head coach. He's not going to be an assistant.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
There was
Okay.
somebody asked something I wanted to hit on, and I don't
Oh
remember
yeah.
what it was. Somebody asked how we should wear actual aprons when talking about the salary cap. Zach Lowe pitched that idea. I think on one of his things is like somebody should get like an apron made, and but then he wanted something with an anvil, or I don't know. He made it weird because that's what he does sometimes. His podcast gets funny sometimes. Yeah. John forgot to put my question in the super chat. I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, John sent this one.
Oh, what was your question, John? Where is
Yeah,
it?
we'll hang out for a minute here
Yeah,
and take your question
give us
before we
that
call
one.
it a show.
Yeah. Somebody asked how old we both are. I'm 45. So I'm not 50 like what the person suggested.
I'm at the point where I'm like, every once in a while I forget how old I am.
Yeah,
I'm like I'll say
yeah,
the wrong thing. I'll be
I have
like,
to
"Oh,
think
I'm
about it.
40." Oh, damn, no wait, I'm
Yep.
not. I'm 41 and I'll be 42 in a few weeks. So,
John,
yeah.
good question. Did you see it just popped in there? Good one to end on too.
John Balderon, what is Pop doing with the Spurs? Can he start a real point guard?
Yeah, this has frustrated me almost since day one. I was fine with the Sohan experiment, but a week or so into the season, it was clear it was not going to work. It was going to be a mess. Yeah, was not there. I like just and then Malachi Branham at the point you saw with Trey Jones. Trey Jones is not amazing by any means, and he's probably not their long term answer for point guard when they move forward. But Trey Jones is good enough for where the Spurs are right now. Makes the game easier on Victor Wembanyama. Made it a lot easier for Devin Vassell. He created some shots for those two guys that wouldn't have got otherwise. Yeah, I would just start Trey Jones. I'd be in the market for a real point guard. I'd be playing Devontae Graham, who is actually a point guard and can actually shoot the ball a little bit too, which would help them. Yeah, I don't fully understand. And it's not necessarily tanking stuff because they're just bad anyway. So DB Far super chat. Spurs should trade for DeJounte back. Yeah, probably not. I don't think that's going to be a thing, but we'll see. But yeah, I don't think that'll be a thing that happens. But yeah, they that's the biggest thing that they need is they need they need a point guard now. You've kind of got players at all the other positions. Not that you're loaded at all the other positions. But you've got players at least, but you got to get a point guard. And until then, just play Trey Jones. Like I don't messing around with all this other stuff just seems like wasting time.
Indeed. I agree. Somebody said Doug said happy birthday. I misspoke. It's actually like a month until my birthday, but still it's not I think it's only weeks away, but whatever. Whatever. Either way, but
somebody
appreciate it.
And they convinced me to join Lakers Nation. No. Not as far as a member of Lakers Nation. We're
as a fan, they're saying.
Yeah, as a fan, no, no. But I have
you hung out with us in Vegas. Yeah, we went to the team dinner and all that. We had a good time.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun. I love the guys. Anytime you guys ever ask me on the show, I have fun coming on the show to talk. Usually, it's when there's trade stuff or salary cap things. We always have fun. I hold no disregard for Lakers fans in general. There's crazy fans, but there are Celtics fans that I can't stand too. I guarantee my largest number of block rates on social media is Celtics fans who are way over the top and just
same
went
for me.
way too far. So
blocking
I don't
Celtics fans. I mean,
yeah. Well, yeah, I'm sure.
No, I'm kidding. No.
So yeah, it's I mean, I generally like a lot of Lakers. It's like any giant market, big major franchise team. There's a lot of fans and there's some real goofballs in the mix, just like there is with the Celtics. Yeah, but I will say this: if the Lakers ever wanted to hire me, Trevor knows this, I would paint my house yellow and purple if the Lakers hired me to work in the front office. That's how I would I'd be all in then. I'd rock Lakers gear and root for the team and everything else, but not now. Yeah. So, but
I need to make this happen just to see it.
Not happening. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I own one yellow shirt and I own one purple hat, and and that's only because those are the Orlando City colors. But no,
I do have a green T-shirt. For a long time, I had nothing, and now this is now my superstition because I really like the shirt. I won't wear it on game days. Like if the Lakers play a game, like as I'm going through my closet, I'm trying to pick out what shirt I'm going to wear. That's a conscious thought that pops into my head. If I go to grab that shirt, I go, oh no, wait, it's a game day today. I can't wear this.
Yeah, I turned our daughter
off. How ridiculous are we, right?
Yeah, I turned our daughter off purple and yellow as favorite colors like years and years ago because I was like, nope, especially the purple. I was like, nope, you'd like pick any other color in the rainbow and in the crayon box, but not purple. Nope, not that one. So now she doesn't even like basketball. So I guess whatever.
A few days ago, I've got my daughter who's 7. I got her in. We went to one of those like lids hat stores, you know what I mean? And we're walking through. My wife's shopping at another store, and I'm just like looking at stuff and everything. And we're walking through, and there's all the NBA hats. And my daughter's looking at them, and she goes, "Well, you're not going to get that one because that's the Lakers' enemy." And it was a Celtics hat. And I went, "You're right. Good job.
Yep.
You knew that.
that's well raised on your end. Absolutely. Yep. All right. Well, we're past an hour now. We appreciate y'all hanging out. It was a really good show. We will do these every Friday leading up to the trade deadline, and then trade deadline day, which is on a Thursday. We will be live at some point. We're still going to figure out timing, but we'll be live ahead of the trade deadline ending, and we'll be, hopefully live reacting to a whole bunch of stuff. It's funny. You get to see the tops and sides of our heads because we're looking at our phones and that tweet deck and all sorts of other stuff, but we have a lot of fun. That's been one of the more fun days that we have is trade deadline day in the history of the show. Somebody asked what's going to go on with Front Office Show in 2024. Hopefully just bigger and better, more people coming out. Hopefully, another round of live shows out in Vegas this coming summer. We had a blast with that. It was cool to see people actually come out and hang out and, to have people come hang out with us. So, more what you've been here to expect, and just keep telling more people. The more people who know, the bigger the show gets, the more things we'll be able to do, especially together and those kind of things live and in person and all that stuff. We have a lot of fun with all of it.
Absolutely. That will be we'll make 2024 the best yet, and we'll keep growing. That's the plan.
Get us over 30K. That's
right.
Point.
Hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Front Office Friday. We'll be back Monday with the latest NBA news. Hopefully we get a busy weekend. I guess if we get a super busy weekend, we may wind up doing an impromptu show, which is what we wound up doing last weekend with the Raptors and Knicks trade. But otherwise, we will see everybody on Monday. Till then, see ya and stay safe.